If you've been wanting to start your own plant nursery and you're anything like me and you work full-time and have a family, you're going to want to watch this video. All right, how's it going, everyone? Ben here with Wild Sprout Nursery and the Permaculture Nursery podcast. Today, I'm going to be answering a viewer question. And the basic gist of the question was, hey, I am thinking about starting my own plant nursery and I am in a similar situation as you are. And I was wondering if you had any advice, things that you would have done differently, that if you were to start again, you would have considered things you may wish you would have known. And my first thought after reading that question was, well, there are a ton of things I would have done differently. And so in this video, I just wanted to kind of address that question and kind of pick apart some things that if you are just starting to envision what it might be like to start your own plant nursery, there's going to be some things that you may or may not have considered, and my goal here is just kind of lay a little bit of groundwork and maybe help you think of some things you may not have thought about before. And if you're new to the channel, just to set the stage here, we rent a property at which we run a very, very small scale nursery. We do a little bit of online and local sales, very micro scale here. And I work full time and I am taking care of a family. I'm a single income, we're a single income household. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from with all this. And with my nursery, Wild Sprout Nursery, we don't buy anything wholesale. Everything we sell is completely homegrown, grown from cuttings or seed, and not purchased from anyone else. All right, so let's start at the beginning here. You want to start a plant nursery. At Wild Sprout here, we primarily focus on edible perennial plants, fruit, nut trees, fruiting shrubs, perennial analogs to a lot of annual vegetables that people grow. Maybe you want to do a flower nursery or willows or a native plant nursery, whatever it is. So first you need to determine, obviously what type of plants you want to grow, and that's going to change. I'll tell you that. One thing that you'll think about is, do you want to diversify, offer a lot of different types of plants, or do you want to specialize? There's pros and cons to each. Specializing can be easier in some ways because you're only catering to one particular market, and you can get your strategies for growing one particular plant down. But if you're growing lots of different types of plants and they have different types of needs, different people interested in them, that can make it more of a challenge. If you want to diversify what plants are offering or specialize, for me personally, I feel like it's only been through really trying to diversify what plants I've been growing that I've been able to find out what plants I've been interested in specializing in. It's just one of those things that, I guess that kind of falls into what I wished I would have known or what I didn't know I needed to know. That's one of those things where you can't expect to know what you need to know unless you've done something. You need the experience. And so now I don't know, there's and you have to be willing to change about what people are interested in if you're trying to make any money doing this. For me, I've kind of thought about I've really wound it down this year where I'm really focusing on like 3 or 4 different types of plants, whereas in years past I've been offering like a dozen plants or something like that, different species. And I think next year I'm gonna do maybe 2 or 3 different species of plants and just pepper in some limited availability of some other things that just kind of reseed themselves, and just go through that way. You also want to think about what type of nursery model are you interested in. I mentioned that here at Wild Sprout Nursery, we exclusively grow all of our own plants from cuttings and seed. We grow the mother plants and we take the material from that, or there's a wild or other trees that are out in the community that I can take from for plant material. That's going to be your cheapest option. Really what it comes down to is how much money up front are you willing to spend as overhead, how much risk do you want to take. The least risk, pretty much could be zero money down option would be to grow plants yourself from things that plant material you harvest on landscape. That's also the highest barrier to entry. If you're watching this and you have never grown a plant from a cutting before, that's going to be, you have some learning to do. You have some chops you need to develop before you decide, hey, I'm going to start my own plant nursery and sell plants. I mean, you can definitely do it, but it's always best to try to start small and then build yourself up from there. Also, if you don't know what stratification means, lots of perennial plants, perennial trees, lots of perennials require periods of cold stratification, or some need heat treatment, and so that's something to consider as well. Another major model that nursery people use is the wholesale buyer model. That could be, that's a really good middle ground there, where say you wanted to grow mulberry trees, you could start your nursery, start the business, get registered as a nursery, get your nursery license, and get your wholesale buyer license. Then all of a sudden you can buy from wholesalers, and say, using the mulberry example, you could buy seedling mulberries for very cheap, maybe a few bucks or a couple bucks a seedling, or maybe even less depending on the size of them. And then say maybe you already had like an established mulberry tree, a Pakistan mulberry or an Illinois everbearing. Then you graft on material onto those seedlings that you buy. You buy the seedling for a few bucks, you graft it on, you could sell it for 10 or 15 bucks, and so that you can really upsell that. Again, it requires skill of grafting. It's going to take you a couple of years, at least a couple of seasons, to get your situation or your system down, realizing how you're going to store them, how you're going to sell them. Can you sell them, or are you left with like 50 plants at the end of the season or whatever? So that's something you got to think about too. There's also the option of just buying wholesale very, very small plants for the cheap, growing them out yourself for a couple of years, and then selling them for more that way. The other main model that people use or utilize when they're starting a nursery is just pretty much the full retail model, where you're still buying wholesale, but you're buying usually established plants and then you're marking them up. Most of your nurseries, your retail nurseries, your garden store nurseries that seasonally sell plants, that's usually what they're doing. They're buying wholesale and then marking them up and selling them that way. That's going to be the most risk and the highest amount of money you're going to need to spend up front. You're probably going to need to take out like a small business loan or something to be able to buy enough plant stock from wholesalers to sell, maybe. So what would I have done differently as far as the nursery model goes? I don't know. It really depends on your motivation. For me, I never intended the nursery to be my main income. It's been purely extra money right now, with aspirations for it being a lucrative side business in the future. It could take years. Eating a stick. Well, it has taken years, and we're still not there yet. But at this point, it's making enough for us to, maybe take a little vacation or something. So for me, I think that the skills and the experience I've gotten just being committed to growing plants from seed or cuttings has been invaluable. Whereas I may not have, if I was just going the straight wholesale grafting route and specializing, then I don't think I would have learned as much. I've been doing this for like 6 years now or so, and I've learned a lot about a lot of different plants and what works and what doesn't work, what areas of my property are the best for growing things, and I'm still figuring that out. Like, some places are getting way too overgrown, and slugs and animals and watering and like all these different things. And it just seems like if you try to go whole hog at it, and you open yourself up to it's the whole adage, work small, fail small kind of thing. If you try to feel like, okay, I'm going to start my nursery business this year and I'm going to go all out, I'm going to buy all these plants and do all these things, I'm going to graft everything, and you've never done it before, maybe not the best option. Take it slow, take it slow. And another thing is like thinking about what kind of market that you want to go after. Do you want to primarily sell online, or do you want to do local sales, or do you want to do a mix of both? That's what we're doing. I will say that if you are able to build up a local market, that is by and large going to be, in my opinion, a lot easier, because online is just a lot harder. Like shipping plants, packing plants, maintaining a website. You should always have a website, but as far as like posting items for sale and stuff, how much of that stick are you gonna eat? It's just a lot. There's always going to be exceptions and other considerations to the things that I'm saying here, the advice I'm giving. Something else to think about when you're first getting started is how much money or how much resources you want to put into establishing garden beds and propagation systems and things like that. You go as simple as just getting some scrap wood and a little bit of screening, or just making some little scrap wood boxes to put cuttings in. You can go to sawmills and get free broken down wood chip material, which cuttings will root in. If I were to start over again, I would have put a lot more thought into making really nice propagation beds. I even did it this year too, where I've just been committed to trying using like scrap pieces that I've had around, and for one, just it makes things look kind of janky, and I personally don't really care about that, but also functionally wise, if I'm trying to exclude critters, then if there's little spaces in between boards, if I'm doing like a 2-stack, like an 8-inch bed or something, 8-inch high that is, with 2 boards, if there's a gap in between, then slugs can get through that. Even if I cover the whole other the whole above part of the bed, or I can do whatever I want, but the slugs are still gonna be able to get in through those little squares. And I don't know. It's just the more time you put into thinking about really where you want to place things, and again, that's the whole starting small thing. Some areas, especially if you're establishing mother plants, they're going to get bigger and they're going to cast more shade over time. And so one of my original nursery areas that I established, which was just bare ground after I cleared it, now it's got 10-15 foot trees in it, casting a lot of shade. And so you're really going to have to, if you're doing the model where you're growing everything yourself and establishing mother trees, that's something else you're going to have to think about. And also, where in proximity to water are you going to be putting your beds? You can try to convince yourself as much as you want. It's like, oh, well, I'll just lug buckets of water over to this bed and water things. Good luck. You're only all but the most committed of people, I think, would be able to maintain that, especially if your routine turns into anything that requires, if your watering routine is going to require you to lug buckets of water around for even 15 or 20 minutes a day, you're not going to keep up with it. It's going to be too much for you to handle. That's one of the challenges with the area that I have a nursery in, is we don't have any hardline water down on the property. We have to route a hose from way up on a hill from the main house, and it's just it's not as, the hose connection is such that we can't leave the water on, and so it just makes it a lot more challenging to establish automated irrigation systems, which would be the easiest way for anybody to start a nursery or to take care of plants, watering plants, is just automation. And that's something that, looking back, I have always had in the back of my mind, or as trying to focus on, is how can I automate all these systems, especially for watering, taking care of the plants. The problem is, just up until this year, with establishing a really rudimentary intermittent misting system, I just haven't been able to. It's been issues with water pressure, or again, because I said we don't have a hardline water, so it's hard to put in things like automatic misting systems for any kind of length, or very complex kind of tubing regimes going through the property. It also floods on our property, and so things get washed away. And so having a whole tangle of drip line around isn't an option. And so really that's something you got to think about. Maybe you just invest maybe the first year you build one really nice propagation bed that's raised, that is made out of really nice material. You have really sturdy support systems for overhead misters. And you fill that up with cuttings, you're able to sell them, great, you can expand. Instead of what I have always been apt to do, which is, let's build 4 or 5 of these beds and set them up, but we're going to use really janky material that we just have laying around on the farm. We're just going to screw whatever in to support things, to support the misters. Things are going to break. It's it's probably not the most ideal spot because I was pressed for time. I just needed to get it up so I could put cuttings in. And, what I've learned is that more times than not, I have to end up moving those beds, or just some sort of condition was less than ideal for it. Or just it's for some reason pests were getting in there and destroying plants, and so I hope that made sense. Yeah, so I think I've offered quite a bit for you all to chew on, but I will give one more piece of advice, and this is something that I really wish I would have started at the beginning of my learning journey, and that is taking very, very detailed notes about everything that you're doing. When am I starting cuttings? When am I seeing things leafing out? About how long are cuttings taking to root? What's the average temperature of the soil? What kind of soil mix am I using? For seeds, what time of year did I plant them? Soil temperature, light conditions, soil composition. How long did it take the plant to get to a sellable size? If you're starting cuttings at different methods of propagation throughout the year, take notes of that too. Take notes on moisture levels. Some plants can tolerate more droughty conditions than others. If you find good mother trees of plant species you're interested in growing, drop map pins, describe where it is, take pictures of the location, keep that in your notes. And through taking really great notes, that's when you can start drawing parallels between like what time of year you should be propagating plants, as far as how you're going to be selling them. You know, for me, like there's winter propagation and summer propagation. You know, if I'm focusing primarily on bare root plant sales for perennials, you know, I'm not really selling that much during the summer. So and for shipping, I'm not really interested in selling like gigantic, huge plants for like large amounts of money. I'm interested in selling smaller plants, maybe more with the idea of selling more of them at cheaper prices. And so if I were to start them in the winter, they would have to grow all season and they would get very large. Whereas if I was to start the elderberries in the summer, they would have just the right amount of root development and size to be a really nice plant start for somebody to purchase during the dormant season. And I could ship that in a relatively small package. It doesn't have to be a gigantic box. And so it's only through really understanding how long it takes plants to be ready for selling. That's why I recommend you take notes. Hey, if you're still watching this at this point in the video, I just want to say, you know, thanks so much for your support. You know, we're actually over 1,000 subscribers now on the Wild Sprout Nursery channel, and that is so awesome. You know, I started this whole project about a little over a year ago, and it's really encouraging to know that people are interested, and that it's also great to know that I'm able to help some people and maybe learn from some of my mistakes and maybe some things that I'm doing right. So yeah, I really appreciate y'all.